Jedi. Awesome. We are live. Welcome everybody to episode number 6 of Operations Unplugged. Welcome to John, my co-host, and our special guest, Andy Steer. Welcome, Andy, and thanks for joining us today.
No problem at all. Afternoon, chaps, and good morning, John.
Nope, afternoon here too.
Is it really?
You said you just woke up.
Yeah. He did say that, didn't he?
Yeah, it wasn't just me.
I had a late morning nap.
Nice. Very nice. How are you all doing?
Good. Yeah, good. Surviving well.
Good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, same here. Although I feel like I'm a little bit bandwidth impaired this week more than I have done. Oh, and John just went pink.
I thought I was looking a bit pasty. So I tried changing it and it didn't make it any better.
Is that because we were making fun of your haircut?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That's fine. But no, I feel like I'm a little bit more bandwidth impaired this week than I have been. I found myself flipping between my 4G on my phone and my home internet connection a bit more because I was really struggling for bandwidth, especially on Google calls over the past week. Really struggled, but maybe it's just me.
I think Google is struggling. Their chat infrastructure is struggling with all of this. I don't know why that is, but I certainly have found that out of the kind of big three, Google, Microsoft, and Zoom, they're probably the ones that are struggling the most.
Is that because Google used to have 20 or 30 different options, and now they've kind of distilled them down to one? Everybody's piled into that, and it's creaking.
So I have a theory, but it's just a theory, which is that nobody really used Google Hangouts apart from Google until this. Everyone had it because they had Google Enterprise, but it was just kind of an add-on that nobody used. And now they've either got to buy Zoom if you're GCP, so you're either an Office 365 customer, in which case you're using Teams, or you're a Google Enterprise customer, and now you found that you had Google Hangouts for free. Included in your subscription. So all of a sudden there's a ton of people using it that just never were.
Yeah.
You can see that they're trying to develop around it, but it was always a little bit of a leftover compared to, Gmail and Google Docs.
Yeah, someone sent me a link there recently of all the Google initiatives that have ended up in a graveyard somewhere. And apparently the list is massive, stuff like Google Wave, and obviously the technology made its way into other products, but the sheer list of stuff that they've ended up killing over the years is quite amazing. Most companies don't have that list that long of the stuff that they're doing on a day-to-day basis, not to mind the stuff they've killed off.
Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I suppose it's fail fast, fail often, or succeed often. Ideally, you would want to aim for, but
Doesn't feel like a good thing if you adopted one of those things, I guess.
Yep.
And began to build some workflows around it, maybe. But I'm not sure that anyone was using Google Plus by the time they turned that off. Possibly not.
I mean, I tried it in the early days and gave up, so I'm not sure. There wasn't a huge fanfare when they turned it off. Google Wave, because people were upset with that.
Well, the technology from that made its way into Google Docs. So, and let's face it, Wave was just this threaded nightmare, which it was fascinating, but it really was never ready for prime time. But the technology was really cool. I found the website. It was killedbygoogle.com. That's what someone said to me. Yeah,
we've never gone that deep in because we're an Office 365 company. So
wait, we let you on this stream and you're a 365 customer? Oh dear.
Well,
kidding.
But I'm going to give Microsoft a little plug here because as people that know me know, I have had a hate relationship with Microsoft OCS and Lync and Skype for Business for over probably nearly 15 years now. And I'm really impressed with Teams. I mean, it's not perfect, but what is perfect? And it does work. I mean, we're not a Teams customer. There are lots of people who are. And when they send me a link, I can join it. I have to set my camera settings every time I join a call. It's a little bit annoying. So I have to set the audio and camera settings. But at least it works. I mean,
Yeah, and the video quality, to be fair, is very good. I mean, it's the same infrastructure, I think, that they use for Skype as well. And I had my first Skype call in a very long time last week, and I was very impressed with the video quality.
So we were
Yeah,
we
go
were
ahead.
using Skype for Business previous. I guess we can call it pre-COVID, right? Yeah. We rolled out. I think it's about 9,500 seats of Teams in about 48 hours.
Wow.
And I was just watching John's eyebrows appeared to disappear then. Yeah.
Well adopted, well received.
Yeah, very well received. And I guess what was really good was there was a minimal training requirement. You know, there's some videos we made available, and we rolled out not just for comms, but we rolled it out for team sites, for everything. And yeah, really, really good uptake, really positive responses. And
yeah,
as you were saying, the video and audio is great.
The video and audio is great. And I must say, actually, if you adopt the Teams and the everything around Teams, like as you mentioned, the Team site, I remember in a previous life, we ended up using Teams. And that's one of the things that really kind of struck me as awesome from an integration standpoint. It's that, hey, let me share you a few files. Let me sync that folder down to OneDrive and edit a few things. It was all just there and it worked, to be fair, very well. Probably better than anything else I've used in the market.
Yeah, I know there's other things that work, right? But it's just it's when your organization goes all in on something, it's good when it works.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and Nadal as Microsoft is just such a different organization. I mean, it was one of my last bits of travel before this whole thing. I was in, it turns out, DC, Washington was a little bit of a hotspot back then, but I was in Redmond. I always think of Redmond, Virginia, but Redmond, Washington. And, you know, it's phenomenal, the company that they've become, the hardware, you know, the Surface Pro X they had demoed there at the time, like really impressive, nice quality hardware. I mean, you compare that to, you know, the Microsoft MX mouse that we used to have. Like what a long way those guys have come, you know, in the last 10 years. Totally different company, really impressive.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, I just noticed on Twitter other people are having some issues with Zoom latency as well, which we had earlier. So just suggesting they do what we did, which was, for anybody who's watching, kick everybody out of the meeting and restart the meeting. It tends to pick a different server. Things seem to work better. But Andy, listen, thanks for joining us. What are you working on these days, or what's kind of keeping you going right now? It's always a good place to start.
So I suppose it's probably, I could say, what I was supposed to be working on, right? And then what happened when COVID came along.
Right.
So
I thought you were going to say, what am I supposed to be working on? And what do I actually do on a daily basis? And I'm like, don't get yourself fired, man.
No, we'll
go ahead.
Yeah, maybe we save that for another podcast, right? So generally speaking, my job within iTelly, right, is to keep an eye on not the short-term stuff, but the medium to long-term stuff. So generally the strategic related stuff about where we're going and what we're doing, and making sure that what we're positioning ourselves towards makes sense from both a market perspective, from an internal perspective, and also from a global intelligence perspective. So I'm kind of working on that on an ongoing basis. And the key focus in that for me over the last probably year to 18 months has actually been our evolving working styles and our working practices, and how we change those for what we think are the kind of coming demands of customers that we're seeing. Because the traditional way of working and the traditional way of deploying projects, but also providing managed services and things is shifting and adjusting. So I've been spending a lot of time with colleagues internally, kind of thinking about how we work as a business, rather than just the things that we do for customers, if that makes more sense. So part of that was a new project for offices that we're doing in the UK. So I'm leading the refresh of our office spaces, or our workspaces as we call them. And
I saw a few tweets on that one, actually. Your new office in remind me the postcode, because I remember that caused some controversy. People was like, where's that postcode?
Oh, CV3.
CV3, that's what it was.
Yeah. So
Coventry,
just outside Coventry. Yeah.
They look like very slick offices. Really cool.
Yeah, it's nice. Thanks. So what we've been trying to do is really create the spaces that we need for the type of work that we find we're doing increasingly. So we got different offices around the UK, as well as offices globally, and many of the spaces that we have are very traditional office spaces. And we've been working quite hard to change that, because what we found, I guess, quite regularly is that people's experiences of visiting the offices and going there to do work wasn't that great. So, you know, we had environments that didn't support the new styles of work that people wanted to engage in. So we kind of started a project to refresh all of that. And I was lucky enough, part of something called the SAP Innovation Tour, which SAP organise. So take groups of us and take us to visit innovation focused businesses, typically over in the Valley. So I've been to Google, LinkedIn, Apple, and a few places over the last couple of years. And that kind of helped work through sort of this workspace stuff. So that, as you know, if you've ever been involved in any kind of building projects or renovation projects, John, I know you have in your place, it takes a lot of time and a lot of thinking. So although you've got a lot of professionals around you, you know, designers, architects, and all of this, if you're the person who's got the picture in your head of what you want it to look like, it takes a lot of time and effort. So that was a lot of the time over the last year or so. And what's happened kind of with the COVID stuff is it's really accelerated that pivot and that change in our business about our working practices. You know, we were starting to deliver projects more remotely from customers, but what it's done now is it's forced us to deliver in a distributed fashion. So nobody's together, not our team, not the customer's team.
Because even previously, when it was remote, your team was probably congregating in your spaces, remote to the customer, but not necessarily remote to each other.
Yeah, so we'd have the typical thing that you'd expect to see. So we'd have probably a cluster of customer people on the customer site, with maybe a few of ours there.
Yeah.
Then we'd have some of our extended project team clustered in some of our offices, and some of them working from home. And then we'd have nearshore and offshore clusters as well. But of course, now all those clusters they've kind of been exploded, right? So everybody's distributed, and that's been a real learning curve, particularly on the customer side, because many of our customers, you know, on their side, they weren't really interested in distributing their teams. No. So they've had to scramble quickly. So it's very interesting to see that a lot of our thinking about how we deliver projects moving forward and the spaces we need for that, it's just been accelerated massively. So so I've been doing a lot of that, which is fun. It's a little bit different from you know, pre-sales and showing the latest bits and pieces, and sitting through endless webinars, some that you're presenting and some that you're attending. So yeah, it's been good fun. It's I think I read an article, was it last week? You know, the world is engaged in the largest ever work from home experiment.
Yep.
Right. And guess what? It's working for many of us. You know, many people are saying, this is great. Can I continue like this?
Now, I know that some people are struggling.
Brent, I got a question on this.
Yeah, go for it.
To jump in. So it's one of the things I've been sort of wrestling with in my mind. So, you know, I get, you know, with the company that we work for, you know, first of all, developing software remotely, not a problem. We're all set up for that. We've got all of our workflows, blah, blah, blah. Support, sales is a little tougher, but we're fine. And I think that's largely because we're a technology software platform. And I'm thinking, you know, you've got a technology project that's running. It's probably also fine. You know what you need to do. You got to go and do it. You're writing some code, you're delivering some software. But what about these organizations that are trying to do wholesale business change? And so, you know, we've got the whole S/4HANA thing going on. And, you know, let's say I'm a company that specializes in sales and distribution of, I don't know, home products. And I want to change the way in which I do my supply chain to become much more just in time, you know, reduce stock outs. Like, how do you run that sort of program remotely when, you know, in the traditional world, you would go to the stock floor and you would interview people and you'd understand, and then you'd move on to the distribution centers, you'd do these business process maps, then you'd have got an as is and you've got a to be. How do you do that remotely, or can you not?
Well, so that's the question that everybody was asking themselves before we got into this situation. right?
Right.
And there were many people saying you can't do it. Okay. I don't think anyone would say it's the preferred way to do it by not walking the floor. And I think in a post kind of, when all this is over and we go back to starting projects, there's always going to be, in my opinion, the need to get close and shadow and work and watch the people who are delivering those processes at the moment on the customer side. I think you're going to have to do that. But what we found is when we've taken projects that are already in flight and distributed those, many of the work packages that we thought lent heavily on interpersonal close working have actually worked very well remotely. So I can't address directly what you said, John, because we didn't have any projects that were just starting when we all got distributed, right? So we were already ramping up on a whole number of projects, but we were in design phase and requirements capture late stages with a few of the projects, and those have flipped remotely. And we're using tools like, we're obviously using Teams, but we're using Mural as well. I'm not sure if you've come across that, which is a really great. Okay, so Mural, I think it's just mural.com, I think. It's a really nifty online platform, which is effectively a shared whiteboard, a shared canvas.
So just to be clear, it's not mural.com.
Okay. All right.
Don't go there.
Go on, Mural.
I'm going there.
I think if you I think if you let Google do the lifting for you.
Yeah.
You got it?
Or have you I'm using Google else? Now, I suppose. Oh, mural.co.
Mural.
Not .com.
Okay.
There we go.
Right. Okay. So we've used
that's
this.
Cool.
This is it's a really good collaboration platform.
And, okay. Oh, that's cool.
They've been running some. I guess what most sensible platforms have been doing. They've been running some open licensing stuff, right? They've basically said, sign up for a free trial that used to be 30 days, but we'll give you 90 days because we're in lockdown. So it's really powerful. You can, very simple level, shared whiteboard where people can put Post-it notes on, but you can see everybody's movements around the whiteboard. So as people click, you can see who's clicking, where they're moving, what they're looking at. It supports tablets as well. So if you've got a pencil with an iPad, you can scribble on Post-its and post them on there. But when it becomes really powerful is that you can have templates, and there's a range of existing ones. Yeah, here you go. So you can use these templates and everybody can collaborate around them. And it's really, really impressive. And we've been using that in limited ways at the moment because it's new for us. But it's I think it's something that looks like a real winner. And I think it's something that we're going to continue to use for sure. And when we were doing a requirements session the other week, and everybody was putting their Post-it notes up, and then you can do voting. So everybody gets a number of votes, and you just, like you used to do with your little dot stickers in your design thinking workshops, you just pop them all on there, and it does all the sums for you, tells you who the winner is. It's really, really powerful.
Kind of reminds me a little
bit. Who the winner
of,
is, and then you override it.
Yeah, I think you override it. The hippo takes ownership. In some ways, it reminds me of that. Do you remember that ideation studio that SAP had in Feltham at one point in the Experience Center? That where they had those walls, and you could just click and drag stuff and throw things across the room and that kind of stuff. Reminds me a bit of that. It's quite cool.
It's good, and I think what we found is if you invite people to it, and they've never seen it or never used it, their pickup rate is real quick. People get it very quickly. They get the physicality of the posting and the dragging things around. And, you can drag and drop other stuff on there. So you can drag images, documents, you can drag all sorts of things in there for people to collaborate around. So I'd give that a bit of a thumbs up and advise people to take a look at it if they're struggling in managing those type of scenarios.
It's really cool. That's one I'm definitely going to play with.
There is another side to this, which is not such a happy side, though, which is, I was talking to one global manufacturer this week, and their S4 program has been shelved, and they furloughed all employees related to business transformation.
Yeah,
and it's been shelved. They've been furloughed for 2 months, but the people are thinking, where do I go now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
that's not the first one of those stories I've heard either in the last week.
Yeah, for sure. I think we were having a chat internally last week. We're pretty lucky in that the customers that we're currently engaged with on our large projects, so far, none of them have signaled a downturn as yet. The customers that we were talking to pre-lockdown about new activities, those conversations are still ongoing, but clearly they could choose to pause at any time. And to take a sales view of it, if you like, the stuff coming in at the top end of the funnel, kind of over the next couple of months, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, whether things slow down. But at the moment, it looks as though there's a reasonable appetite with the companies that we work with to engage, to either gain some kind of advantage through this period or to get stuff done that they've maybe been putting off for a while.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're starting to see a slightly different story, which is a tale of two cities is starting to emerge, where there is just a type of organization that either can't or won't do anything at this time. And some of them, I think, they're in dire straits, right? And they can't. And there are others that for some reason are using it as an excuse for organizational paralysis. Which and that one concerns me much more. I mean, if you've got macro factors, but if you're using it as an excuse for organizational paralysis, you really need to have a think as a leadership team of what's going on there, because that's all bad. But then there's a flip side to that. The other city, which is those organizations who recognize that they need to innovate and prepare for the future, and we are having much more forward-thinking conversations with certain customers than we have in the past, really thinking about the future of where they want to head and what strategically they want to do. They're actually much more interesting discussions. So it's real, but that's how I'm seeing it. But you guys are probably, my recollection of it used to be in that market is, of course, you're exposed primarily to your existing customers. New business is a small part of what you do each year, right?
Yeah, I think we're in a fortunate position, right? So I'll put some simple numbers out there, right? So we're about 400 people in the UK, about 100 million turnover. Roughly half of that turnover is recurring revenues. So what that does is that gives us, depending on which way you want to look at it, it either insulates us from kind of some of the choppiness that's there, or you can say it provides us a foundation to kind of go and be maybe a little bit more creative about ways in which we can help customers, right? So we never forget that we're in that position, and we're part of a €1 billion company, and all of that money comes solely from SAP related activities as well. So we're pretty fortunate at the moment with regards to our ability to go out to the market and help customers. So I don't know whether you saw, but we've released a load of COVID specific accelerators out for customers across a whole range of different solution areas. And yeah, they need some services to get them implemented, but we're kind of looking the other way on the IP charges for those to try and get things moving for people. And I remember when I used to work for a smaller business, like there's no way we'd have been able to do that. We just wouldn't have been able to kind of have that sort of creativity about the way that we could push stuff out for people. So it might be that the reaction that we're seeing from customers is partly to do with that, right? Maybe we happen to have the customers who are responding to that, and that's freeing things up and keeping things moving. If we had a different set of customers and we were a different business, I'm sure we'd be having a completely different experience.
And there's some self-selection that goes on here, right? When it comes to customer acquisition, because you acquire the sorts of customers that are good for the kind of business you are, and maybe that's done you well in this.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely that, John. I think when you look at the market, particularly around SAP as it is in the UK, right? There's a finite number of businesses already running SAP, right? There are some that have large competency centers and they just need somebody who can help them with augmentation or whatever around that competency center. But there are many, many organizations that don't have competency centers and they're looking for deep partnership that they can kind of lean on in difficult times, right? And you've got to pick those customers carefully and make sure that you can do what they want to do when things get tough. And so far, we seem to have got the right selection of customers there that mean that when these things happen, we can work well together. But as you know, projects are always stressful. There's always problems. They're always difficult. It's how you get through those things that are the measure, not whether you have any issues.
Yeah, because there's always going to be issues, let's face it.
Yeah, it's software, isn't it? It's software and people.
Hey, this is what keeps us in business.
Oh yeah, blame the software, Andy. It's always the software's fault, right?
Yeah, remind me when we had to quit out of Zoom and come back in again.
Yeah, let's not talk about that one. But I want to kind of go back to one of the points you mentioned, Andy, around those spaces that you're creating and that kind of stuff. I'm seeing a lot of news or kind of twittering, as it were, for want of a better phrase, around offices that might not reopen. And I know Twitter, made some announcements around this. And I think that kind of speaks as well to what we were talking about earlier, which is that there is a fundamental shift in how we run these projects and different tools that we're going to be using. But does it also mean that we're not going to open offices? And great, that's a bunch of capital that the company doesn't have to spend. So can it be spent on other things right now? And to your point, John, it's those organizations that aren't just stopping everything and playing it safe. Where would you invest that money now? Because should you be looking at automation? Should you be looking at these tool sets, investing in those? Where's the right place to put that money right now?
I think if I was an organization that had, let's suppose I can get access to capital, right? I can free up either by lowering costs or whatever.
Yeah.
In times like this, I'd be looking to spend it on things that will differentiate me against my competitors. And more often than not, those things are innovation type activities, right? And it would seem logical if people can do that's what they do. But I think whether real estate in the short term will help with that, I don't know. There's a lot of long leases out there.
Yes, yes, there are.
So what I mean, in our type of business, what we're doing is we're just saying, we think that what this space needs to do in the future is different to what it does now.
Yeah.
So whereas before we might be thinking, right, we need space for 60 hot desks and we need a few offices, a few meeting rooms. What we'll now be doing is saying, well, maybe we need 20 hot desks and we need 5 open creative studio type areas, which can be mixed use and mixed purpose. So what that means is we're still paying the same for the offices, but the value that they deliver to us is significantly different. And I think we're able to do that because that's the type of business we are. I think if you are a more traditional organization, maybe you're a manufacturing plant with an office bolted on the side with 80 people in it, I'm not sure you're just going to turn around and go, well, all those 80 people don't bother coming into the office anymore. Even, no matter how, in quotes, successful this has been, I think many of the learned behaviors in those organizations are based around a lot of people being together in one place, where quite often, I was talking to somebody else about this earlier on, actually, quite often productivity is confused for effort. So they see a lot of people sitting there doing stuff and they go, we're productive, right?
Exactly.
Whereas in the knowledge economy and the service economy where we are, outcomes what you measure for productivity.
But also, I mean, we've discussed many times, even myself and John have discussed many times the fact that, when you've worked from home, and I've worked from home for a very long time, I know that actually I can be incredibly effective by walking away and kind of going, you know what, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go prepare lunch for my son, or something along those lines, something completely different, which might be from the outside look, he's not being productive at all. But actually, that space and that ability to walk away is my way of kind of going, I need to think about this for a while subconsciously. I'm still working, but this is the way I'm doing it. And I'm more productive myself as a result. The old school way of looking at it doesn't ring true anymore. Doesn't ring true. Sorry, John, I cut across you.
Well, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure I agree, Andy, whether this isn't bigger a bigger thing. I was speaking to a customer yesterday, and because we were trying to make decisions on when we consider reopening our offices, and it's really complicated in a global business. These are difficult decisions to make. I'm not an epidemiologist or an immunologist or have any expertise, and so we have to listen to the best advice we can get. And nor do I want to be a politician, so avoiding all of these topics on this. Nor do I want this show to turn about politics, right? But so we have to make difficult decisions. So I contacted one of our customers just to get their perspective, and what they said was, they said, our office has had to remain open. It's been forced to. We're a critical business, and so had the office remained open. He said, "There's nobody in there." And we don't think we're going to be there for a year. And actually, I don't know whether I'm ever going back in the office. And actually, we're talking about whether or not we replace the office with a billboard. And okay, we went from here to quite extreme pretty quickly. But that's serious thinking. And I'm sort of wondering the same. I was going to open a US office, so it was supposed to already been open. We had it in plans for this quarter. I mean, like, what, am I going to open that office now? And sure, it's very different if you've got a big office, but these leases do come up for renewal. And I think, though, where I do agree with you is on your point around how you reuse the spaces, because I think, communal spaces will become much more important than cubicles, because cubicle farms, according to the reports I've read, are potentially, petri dishes.
Right.
And especially when I've talked to customer service people in all kinds of different companies. I'm pretty certain most of them are sat in a room. I've heard the kids crying in the background, or the dogs barking. They're in a dark room somewhere, or in a bedroom, or wherever they can get by. And you can measure that productivity on a computer system and say, are they doing the right number of calls? Are they on the phone, or are they just, playing Fortnite? Here you go. Got that in.
Wow. Look at you with a modern reference.
look at me.
Down with the kids.
Down with the kids. My kid's too young for Fortnite. He's more Bob the Builder, if that existed in this country. But my point is, I think we're really going to see a shift in working for knowledge workers away from these cubicle farms and towards communal areas where you come in for a purpose.
Right.
And then you do your homework, do your work at home wherever you do it. That's what I think. Anyway.
So I agree 100% with that. And one of the things that I've repeated many times while we've been doing these office projects is work is something you do, not somewhere you go. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference, I guess. So I'm with you, John, 100% on that. And our ethos inside Intelligence in the UK is exactly that. However, I think, and I worry that there are a number of organizations out there who are just itching to snap back at the earliest opportunity that they have. Now, the longer this goes on, of course, more ingrained habits will form, and issues and challenges will be worked through, and barriers will fall. But I just genuinely believe that there will be a reasonable number of organizations who will want to snap back. Now, what that will mean is, of course, if you're an employee and you're sitting there and you're looking at the organization you work for snapping back, but somewhere else you could work not snapping back as far, then all of a sudden that changes your choices about where you go to work. And that's one of the reasons we're changing what we do, because we want to be the destination employer. We want people to say, wow, you get all this flexibility there. You get to work this way. You get to do these things. So I think it'll be a differentiator. But I don't think
there's a great point there.
Going to go that way.
And actually, just to expand on that point, actually, because you're coming at it from the employee side and what they want to see, and what they suddenly realize it's a much better way of living. They don't have to commute for 2 hours every morning or in the evening or whatever the case may be. I just give you 2 data points from 2 close friends of mine who are based in Dublin. One works for a large healthcare provider. One works for a large software company. And they're married, but working for different companies. And they were both kind of told, hey, one of them has asthma, for example. Hey, we're probably not going to open our office to you for quite a while because you're high risk. We might let you back in maybe 2021, maybe midway through or whatever the case may be. And he said, well, how would you feel about me lowering my rent by moving out of Dublin and moving somewhere in the Midlands or into a rural area. And they went, yeah, it's a great idea. No problem. Go for it. And his wife's company's reaction was the exact same. Oh, yeah, we're a software company. You can do this remotely. No problem. So the two of them are actively looking to see where they can get, instead of paying, $3,000 a month for an apartment in a metropolitan area, they can go get a house for €700 a month somewhere.
And do they take a pay cut as part of that?
No pay cuts at the moment.
No, I'm just wondering, and I say that because there are times where, in the Bluefin days, we had people that wanted to move to other countries. And so they want to go and live in Seville or something. And so we couldn't have them on site. So they don't, at that time, we couldn't bill them for the same amount. So we'd come to an arrangement.
Yeah.
If it was the same. But by the way, I have a friend on Facebook and he works for a very, very large company. And I saw him post on Facebook yesterday. He's been called in the office. He was on a plane on his way into the office in San Francisco. Yeah. So some of the largest companies in the world have done that.
Yeah. So I think we're going to see eventually a number of companies pushing people to go back to the old way. Mm-hmm. I think some individuals, I have no doubt, will find comfort in that.
Yeah,
right.
Because they've done it for 20 years. Yeah, that's what they're used to.
Absolutely, and they can't handle the change because we know, response to change is a very individual thing. Mm-hmm. But I'm pretty sure there'll be a large number of people who want to work in a different way, and we've run the Qualtrics remote work pulse that Qualtrics made available for free. So we've been running that inside our business. And it's been fascinating to see that what we have, and we've got large communities inside our business who work remotely distributed anyway, all the time. So our managed services team, I think 80% of them are distributed and remote about 75% of the time, right? So there's a pool, they move around, but broadly speaking, they spend a lot of their time at home. Now for our field consultants, that's different, right? They're often on customer sites. But looking at the pulse feedback, if you strip out what we call like the COVID factors, it's difficult because I'm having to help my kid with his schooling, or I'm worried about not being able to visit my mum, or these things. You put those to one side, there's then a massive, just like a tsunami of positivity of people saying, I'm exercising every day. I love the flexibility. I'm not having to travel. I haven't stayed in a hotel for 8 weeks. All of these sorts of positive things. Yeah. So I know for sure that there's a large number of those people who they don't want to snap back. They might snap back a little way, but they don't want to go all the way back. And I know that in iTele UK, as an exec team, we're talking about how, what does the normal look like in the future? How do we take the learnings from now and go forward with that? Because the reality is customers are in this reality now without making a choice about it. So, we used to say, we could deliver your project remotely. And they go, I'm not so sure. I want the consultants on site now.
Now they don't want you on site at all.
Come on, guys, open the doors.
Let us in.
So it's proven that it works. Right. Yeah. So therefore, when we start to have conversations in the future with people, we've got a great body of evidence that says, look, we know how we can do this.
So, so the other thing I'd say, which is really interesting, was, the deal with people working in SAP in the UK in particular, right, is, you work for a customer and you work local, you go into an office, or you work remote, or you work for a consultancy and your job is on the road. Now, the deal with working in the consultancy was you earn a lot more money. I mean, it was 20, 30% more money. What's really interesting now is that the people that are consulting kind of got the best of both worlds, right? They get to work from home and they're getting the money from a consulting gig. I mean, you guys are billing it, so I guess that's fair. But I wonder whether that changes the market in the long term. Maybe.
Well, I think, look, John, professional services, like as a whole, like the largest umbrella you want to put over professional services, you know, legal, accountancy, anybody who bills for their time, right? That is all under pressure by the changes that we've been talking about, right? Technology changing the way in which those things get delivered, whether you can actually get away with billing anymore for time or whether customers want the outcome instead. All of those things are massive shifts, but you're absolutely right. If we look at the moment at our P&L around how we're running projects, like there's no expenses line.
Yeah.
No, it's incredible.
Like there just isn't.
Yeah.
There's no marketing line either, by the way. I mean, that's not quite the same, but the marketing line.
Well, I don't know about that because you're paying me for this, right?
good luck with that. Brenton, we'll get some special brew sent over, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But I got a question on this though, because our little kind of peer group was talking about this. You know, what happens to the offshore locations like India? So, and I just want to provide the two perspectives. So there was a perspective who said, it's going to go gangbusters. He's like, everybody's going to want to outsource. They want to get costs down. It's all going to be about driving efficiencies. India is going to go massive. And I said, I don't know that I agree with that. I said, I think people are going to be saying, how do we reduce the human risk? How do we move more local to us so we have control and increase automation to reduce cost?
I firmly believe it's that second one, as you well know, John, because I feel like, you know, leadership teams, businesses will be forgiven now for ending up in a period of shutdown because, you know what, nobody really saw this level of requirement coming. But I think in the future, because we've experienced it, if it happens again, and all the experts say it will happen again, you won't be forgiven for allowing your company to shut down if you haven't invested in automation.
Let me give you a simple example before we pass it to Andy. So simple example, where I am right now, you cannot buy liquor. You haven't been able to buy liquor for 8 weeks.
How are you functioning?
You can see me shaking.
I think you need to send the special brew to John, not to me.
And there are workarounds to this particular problem. But in the state of Pennsylvania, they shut down the liquor stores. They moved it to online sales. They then realized that the business processes they had for online sales didn't allow for direct ship to people, not at the kind of scale we're talking about. Right. So they shut that off. Then they opened up the liquor stores again, but for pickup only, and you had to phone your order in. But that doesn't work because they haven't got the people to man the lines. So we're all being dry here for about 8 weeks. And by the way, it's illegal to have wine or liquor shipped to you. You have to have it shipped to the liquor store.
Which is why I haven't sent him the special brew, because technically it's illegal for me to send it to him.
Yeah, there was a song, Special Brew, Oh, We Love You. Anyway, but that's a simple example where they have to do, I mean, I know everyone else did ERP in 1993, and obviously Pennsylvania Liquor Board didn't, and they will have to now move to that kind of model, no doubt. I don't know, actually, they may not be that smart, but assuming they halfway know what they're doing, they've got to be thinking about how do we build business process to automate distribution of liquor, like Diageo did in 1993. So I don't know.
So to answer your question, or to try to answer your question, John, I mean, look, whenever we look at any kind of trends or anything going through organizations, the first thing we always have to say is, do you know what? There's winners and losers. Yeah. So when you say which of the two, well, it's going to be both, isn't it? Because some people will go all in thinking that going to the offshoring and the outsourcing is the right way. I don't think it is, but I think many will think that is the answer. And then there'll be the other organizations that will kind of try and be a bit smarter about the way they do it. And I think those are the ones that probably have a better chance of success. But you can be absolutely sure that there will be organizations in both camps without a shadow of a doubt, because that's what happens. You know, smartness isn't uniformly distributed, is it?
I'll tell you something that I've been really impressed though. We're working, and I'm not going to name names. We're working with one of the big four Indian outsourcers, and they have a contract with their customer, and that contract requires them to bring software innovation for automation. And so they've introduced us into that customer to meet effectively the KPIs for that contract, which gives them an additional bill level or whatever. I don't know how the details.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think just to touch on the offshore piece for a moment. So we've got a pretty large business in India, right? But what we find different with our business in India is that our business grew over there as a consultancy for the Indian market. Right.
That's a very different thing.
Yeah. So what we do when we work with them is we're effectively doing project augmentation with highly skilled individuals who happen to be in a lower cost place, right? So they're still very experienced SAP consultants.
Because they're primarily they're offering primary services to the local market as standard. They're not there specifically to augment your teams.
Yeah. Now that gives us a slightly different experience in the way in which we put those offerings together, because we never put a proposition together to the customer that just says, right, here's this wholly offshored service that you get. What we always have is a blended kind of level of customer contact going from somebody who's onshore, direct, close to the customer, and then depending on what the customer's looking for, we've got waves that go out from there that stretch further across the globe, depending on what they need. So one of our HANA competency centers is in Malaysia. And we've got a COE there, and they are
hired all my old team.
Yes, seriously smart people. So yeah, maybe.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
but I think that's
But I think you guys are perfectly positioned here, though, because we're talking a little bit at cross purposes here, because you're talking about the extremely high quality delivery centers that exist in places in India, and I'm talking about the sorts of repetitive activity that happen in some places, and they are different.
No, I completely agree with you, John. Yeah, sorry. So I think on that angle, when we look at we've got a global managed services team, okay? And when we look at what they do, both across the, 10 or 12 intelligence data centers globally, plus the NTT data and NTT limited data centers that we work with, plus our Azure and AWS footprints, then yes, absolutely, the processes that we do through there, automation is rolling through there like a train, right? It's flying through there.
Got to be, right?
We're looking to automate as much as possible, looking to lower the costs, looking to make it more resilient. All of those things, absolutely, in those areas.
There are companies that do SAP daily checks in Excel and Word still, and service providers that do that. I mean, just like simplest of examples of insanity that happens.
It also shows that there's lots of wood that can just be chopped, and you can get massive benefits if you just do the basics.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, there's also customers who demand to see those things as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Which can be automated into a report, into a PDF if they need it, saved into a shared file system. But a human doesn't have to do that, right?
No. I agree.
They want to see the fingerprint of where they initialed beside it. Very important. Kidding. Right. On that note, I think we're coming to the end of our time, guys. Is there anything else you guys want to cover before we finish up?
I'm good. I think it'd be great to have you back sometime, Andy. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, sure. I think the only thing I'd say in conclusion, guys, is I always try to sort of walk a fine line at the moment, because I can't help but feel reasonably positive from a business perspective about things that are happening moving forward. But it often feels quite difficult talking in positive tones when you turn the news on and you see what else is going on. So it's a very difficult time for a lot of people. But I think we're trying to remain positive by looking at the lessons, trying to draw lessons from the things that are happening to us at the moment. And we're trying to use that to become a more resilient, a more agile, and hopefully more successful business in the future. Because I think if you're not learning now, then you're just going to lose, right? You're just going to end up in a really bad place.
Quick thing before you guys end then. So I can go first. So what have you learnt personally? So I'm holding this here, which is a router bit or a router bit, as you call it in the UK, and I've got a broken window, and so I'm going to be creating a new and it's not the pane that's broken, it's the actual frame. So I'm going to be routing a new frame at some point when I get a minute, and replacing that window, because you can't get anyone to do that work right now. So what have you guys, what new skills have you acquired in this last 8 weeks?
I'm working on home automation, so I've bought a raft of these kind of things. So this one's measuring temperature and humidity in the room. This isn't Wi-Fi, this is Bluetooth. So I've got a smart hub coming, and I'm building some smart home stuff just to keep an eye on some of the bedroom stuff. It was on my list for a long time, but it's just, spending some time doing it.
Nobody wants to know about the temperature in your bedroom right now, Brenton.
Hey, it's quite hot here.
He's like, it's 19 degrees. It's time to get the special brew out.
Exactly. Although it is quite funny how many times this podcast turns into talking about special brew and PA liquor laws. John, Andy, you go next.
You need a recurring theme. You need an ongoing narrative stream
and a jingle.
What it is, you see. Yeah. So I haven't so much picked up any new kind of home maintenance skills or anything like that. But the thing that I've absolutely learned through having the family and the 2 kids at home all this time, is I'm spending a lot of time during the day. I'm sharing the office space with my 12, nearly 13-year-old who's having to homeschool. And what I've realized is that looking back after all of these years, maths and geometry, they weren't quite as difficult as I thought they were at the time, because I'm acing those now. And actually they're a bit easier than some of the other challenges I have in front of me.
Well, I'll point out that's okay when they're 12. By the time they're 16 or 17, you might be in deep doo-doo. Gets a bit harder.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the world will look like then. so maybe I'll still be homeschooling him, and I'll be learning with him.
Well, yeah, maybe you'll be learning about relearning the Laplace transform. Who knows?
Awesome.
Well, the way that some of these things go, he might be being taught COBOL. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Although, did you see there's a massive demand for COBOL skills at the moment to prop up all these mainframes that are now underpinning critical processes and seeing unbelievable demand?
I think that was Andy's
money
point.
Is a COBOL developer right now.
That was your point, wasn't it?
The richest consultant I ever met was a COBOL specialist, and he was the only guy in the UK who understood how I nearly said the name then, but a large organization's financing system ran. He was the only guy in the country who understood it, and he wrote his own check, basically. He was on a ridiculous amount of money, and they couldn't replace the system, and they couldn't replace him.
I've met a few.
COBOL.
There are a few in that category. All right, guys, I am being harassed.
I'm about to be harassed. Andy, thank you so much for coming on. It'll be great to have you back again. We didn't even get through half of what we were planning on talking about, which is a great sign. It means we rabbit holed on a few topics, which has been a lot of fun. So thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll have you back again soon.
Pleasure as always.
Thanks, John.
Take care.
Have a great evening.
Bye.